The Silent Warning. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the void between stars, a massive station built by civilizations far older than human memory. Inside its crystalline walls, representatives from 43 different species gathered beneath a dome that displayed the swirling colors of a nearby nebula. The air hummed with a dozen different atmospheric processors, each one tailored to keep its designated section breathable for the delegates who occupied it. At the center of the chamber stood a simple podium, and behind it stood Ambassador David Chen of Earth. He was a tall man with graying hair and steady eyes, wearing the formal uniform of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps. Around him, the council members sat in their elevated seats, looking down at the human representative with expressions that ranged from mild curiosity to open contempt. "We have reviewed your petition," announced Councillor Thane, a reptilian being whose species had been traveling between stars for over 6,000 years. His voice echoed through the translation devices that allowed all species to understand one another. "Earth requests full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and responsibilities that such membership entails." Chen nodded respectfully. "That is correct, Counselor. Humanity has proven itself capable of interstellar travel. We have established peaceful contact with 17 different species. We have contributed scientific discoveries and cultural exchanges. We believe we have earned our place among you." A sound like grinding metal filled the chamber. It was laughter, coming from Councillor Vrax of the Thanari Empire. The insectoid creature's mandibles clicked together as he spoke. "Earned? You have barely left your own star system. Your fastest ships cannot even reach half the speed of our cargo vessels. Your planet has a single moon, a handful of colonies, and a population that still fights among itself over primitive concepts like borders and resources." Other council members joined in with their own dismissive comments. The Saravine representative, a being of pure energy contained within a magnetic field, pulsed with colors that the translation system rendered as condescension. "Humanity has existed for what, 200,000 years? And you have only achieved spaceflight in the last century and a half? Some of us have been navigating the cosmos for millennia before your species even discovered fire." Chen remained calm, his hands clasped behind his back. He had expected this reaction. Every report Earth had received about the Galactic Council suggested that the older species viewed newer civilizations as children at best and as resources to be exploited at worst. "We may be young," he said quietly, "but youth should not be mistaken for weakness or irrelevance." "Irrelevant is precisely what you are," Thane responded, his tail sweeping dismissively. "Your petition is denied. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, when you have something of value to offer, you may reapply. Until then, Earth will remain classified as a protectorate world, limited to your own solar system and supervised trade with approved species." Chen's jaw tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Counselors, I urge you to reconsider. The galaxy is changing. There are threats on the horizon that will require cooperation from all spacefaring species, regardless of how long they've been traveling the stars." "Threats? What would a species barely out of its cradle know about galactic threats? We have maintained peace and order for 3,000 years. We have systems in place, protocols that have been refined across centuries. We do not need the input of primitives who still use chemical rockets for planetary launches." Before Chen could respond, every display in the chamber suddenly went dark. The nebula view above them vanished, replaced by static. Emergency lighting activated, bathing the council chamber in a harsh red glow. Security alarms began to wail. "What is happening?" demanded Councillor Lissa of the Meridian Collective, her crystalline form refracting the emergency lights into 1,000 dancing colors. The station's central AI spoke with unusual urgency. "Unidentified signal detected. Origin point, deep space, vector 773 Mark 42. Signal strength increasing. Translation protocols engaging. The static resolved into an image that made every being in the chamber fall silent. It was a ship, but unlike any vessel in the Council's extensive databases. Its hull was black as the void itself, angular and cruel, covered in symbols that seemed to writhe and shift when observed directly. The ship was massive, easily dwarfing the Council station itself. And behind it, emerging from the darkness of space, were hundreds more. A voice emerged from the transmission, deep and cold, speaking in a language so ancient that the translation system struggled to process it. When the words finally came through, they carried with them a weight of malice that made the air itself feel heavy. Species of the Galactic Council, you stand in territory claimed by the Kryn Dominion. Your presence here is an offense. Your existence is an insult. You have 7 cycles of your primary star to vacate all systems within this sector. Any who remain will be removed. Resistance will be met with extinction. The transmission cut off, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Then chaos erupted. Delegates shouted over one another, demanding explanations, calling for military assessments, questioning how such a massive fleet could have approached undetected. Chen watched the pandemonium with a growing sense of dread. He had read the classified reports, the ancient legends that spoke of the Kryn. They were a nightmare from the galaxy's distant past, a species so violent and advanced that they had nearly wiped out all sentient life in this spiral arm before mysteriously vanishing 5,000 years ago. Everyone had assumed they were extinct. They had been wrong. Thane finally restored order, his voice cutting through the noise. Silence. We need tactical assessments immediately. Military Coordinator Ven, what are our defensive capabilities? A slug-like being with multiple eye stalks consulted holographic displays that materialized before him. Counselor, based on preliminary scans, the Kryn fleet consists of approximately 700 capital ships, each one equipped with weapons technology that exceeds our current understanding. If their historical records are accurate, a single Kryn destroyer could devastate an entire planetary defense grid. Then we evacuate, suggested Lissa, her voice shaking. We have 7 days. We can move the core populations of threatened worlds to safer sectors. And abandon everything? Vrax snapped. Our colonies, our resources, our territory? We would be surrendering a third of council space. Better that than extinction, Lissa shot back. As the argument intensified, Chen stepped forward. Counselors, there may be another option. The chamber fell silent, all eyes turning to the human representative. Thane's expression was incredulous. You have something to contribute, Ambassador? Perhaps Earth's primitive weapons could annoy the Kryn into leaving? Chen ignored the mockery. 3 months ago, Earth's deep space monitoring network detected unusual energy signatures in the outer reaches of our galaxy. We didn't know what they were at the time, but we began developing contingency protocols. When I came here today, I came prepared to discuss more than just membership. He activated his own holographic display, showing technical schematics that made several of the more scientifically inclined council members lean forward with interest. We call it the Resonance Protocol. It's based on a theory that every ship, no matter how advanced, generates a unique quantum signature. If you can identify and match that signature, you can create interference patterns that disrupt their systems. Theoretical nonsense, Vrax declared. Such technology has been attempted for millennia. It doesn't work on military-grade shielding. It does if you approach it differently, Chen replied calmly. You've been trying to overpower the shields. We found a way to make them overpower themselves. It's like convincing a fortress to lock its defenders inside. Counselor Ven's eye stalks all focused on Chen simultaneously. You're saying Earth has developed a weapon capable of disabling Kryn ships? Not just disabling, Chen said quietly.
neutralizing, completely and permanently. But it requires close-range deployment and precise coordination. It requires a fleet willing to get within weapons range of the Kryn and hold position long enough for the Residence Protocol to take effect. The implications hung in the air. What Chen was describing was a suicide mission. Any fleet that attempted such a maneuver would be subjected to devastating firepower before the weapon could work. Thane's expression had shifted from contempt to calculation. "And Earth possesses such a fleet?" Chen confirmed. "We do. We've been preparing for something like this since we first detected those energy signatures. We didn't know what we were preparing for, but we knew it was coming. Humanity has a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst." "Why would you help us?" Lissa asked, genuine confusion in her translated voice. "We just..."
When Earth awakens. The void between stars had never seen anything quite like the assembly that gathered at the edge of Council space. Ships from 43 different civilizations formed a defensive perimeter, their hulls gleaming with the colors and designs of cultures spanning millennia. Massive dreadnoughts from the Thanari Empire floated alongside elegant Saravine energy cruisers. Meridian defense platforms deployed their crystalline weapon arrays, while dozens of other species contributed what military strength they possessed. And at the center of it all, looking almost insignificant by comparison, hung the human fleet. 200 vessels, each one roughly half the size of a standard Council frigate. Their hulls were a dull gray, marked only with simple identification numbers and the blue and white emblem of United Earth. To the experienced military coordinators observing from their respective flagships, the human contribution looked underwhelming at best. Aboard the UES Defiance, Ambassador Chen stood on the bridge alongside Admiral Catherine Morrison, a woman whose steel gray hair and sharp eyes reflected a lifetime of military service. Around them, holographic displays showed the tactical situation in real time. "Kryn fleet is holding position at the marker point," reported the tactical officer, a young lieutenant named Park. 647 capital ships confirmed. They're not advancing, just waiting. "They're giving us the full 7 days," Morrison observed, her arms crossed. "They want us to panic, to evacuate, to show weakness." "Then we'll show them something else," Chen replied quietly. A communication request flashed across the main display. It was Counselor Thane, calling from his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. Morrison accepted the connection, and the reptilian counselor's face appeared before them. "Ambassador Chen, Admiral Morrison, the Council fleet is in position. All ships report ready status." Thane paused, and for the first time since Chen had met him, the counselor's voice carried uncertainty. "I will be honest with you. Many of my colleagues believe this is a mistake. They think we should use these 7 days to evacuate as many people as possible." "And what do you think, Counselor?" Morrison asked directly. Thane's tail moved in what the translation system indicated was a gesture of resignation. "I think that if the Kryn are not stopped here, evacuation will only delay the inevitable. I think that perhaps the galaxy needs to remember that survival sometimes requires courage more than caution." His eyes fixed on Chen. "I think that perhaps we have been comfortable for too long and have forgotten what it means to fight for what we believe in." Chen nodded slowly. "Then let's remind everyone. All ships, this is command, execute Operation Prometheus. We're going in." The human fleet moved as one, breaking formation and accelerating toward the Kryn position. Behind them, the Council forces held their defensive line, watching with a mixture of hope and horror as the small Earth vessels raced toward almost certain destruction. On the bridge of the Kryn flagship, the Eternal Night, Commander Zeth observed the approaching human ships with cold amusement. His species had conquered 1,000 worlds before humanity's ancestors had even learned to walk upright. These creatures, barely capable of faster-than-light travel, thought they could challenge the Kryn dominion? "Shall we destroy them, Commander?" asked his weapons officer, eager to demonstrate the superiority of Kryn military might. "Not yet," Zeth replied, his voice like grinding stone. "Let them come closer. I want the Council species to watch their champions die. I want them to understand the futility of resistance. When these humans are nothing but debris, the others will surrender without a fight." The human fleet crossed the halfway point between the two forces. Standard military doctrine suggested they should have begun firing by now, launching long-range missiles or energy weapons to soften up the enemy before close engagement. Instead, they maintained their course in silence, their weapon systems powered down. "They're not even armed," scoffed Zeth's second-in-command. "What kind of attack is this?" On the Defiance, Admiral Morrison counted down the distance. 50,000 kilometers, 40,000, 30,000. All around her, the bridge crew worked with intense focus. This wasn't like any military operation in human history. There were no precedents, no training manuals, no historical battles to study. Everything they were about to do had been theorized, simulated, and prayed over during 3 months of desperate preparation. "Range," Morrison announced. "All ships, deploy resonance nodes. Authorization code Prometheus 7 Alpha." Throughout the human fleet, bay doors opened. From each ship emerged dozens of small satellites, each one no larger than a car. They spread out in a precise three-dimensional pattern, forming a lattice of nodes between the Earth vessels and the Kryn fleet. "What are they doing?" Zeth demanded, leaning forward in his command throne. "Those devices have no weapon signatures. They're not generating any detectable energy." "Scanning now, Commander," reported the Kryn science officer. "The objects appear to be passive receivers of some kind. They're not broadcasting, not charging weapons. They're just there." Zeth's eyes narrowed. Something was wrong. 5,000 years ago, when the Kryn had last walked the galaxy, warfare was predictable. You brought the biggest ships, the most powerful weapons, and you crushed your enemies through superior force. This silent deployment of unarmed satellites made no tactical sense. Unless it wasn't meant to. "All ships, full power to shields," Zeth commanded. "Weapons hot. If those devices activate anything hostile, I want them vaporized immediately." But it was already too late. Admiral Morrison gave the order. "Execute resonance protocol, all frequencies." The satellites activated simultaneously, but they didn't fire weapons or emit destructive energy. Instead, they began to hum, creating a quantum field that spread invisibly through space. It was a frequency so precise, so carefully calibrated, that it matched the exact resonance signature of Kryn's shield technology. Physics has certain immutable rules. One of them is that when two wave patterns of identical frequency meet, they interfere with each other. Normally, this isn't a problem. But when those waves are the very foundation of your defensive shields, and when the interference is precisely designed to create exponential feedback, the first Kryn ship to fail was a destroyer on the outer edge of their formation. Its shields didn't collapse, they did something far worse. They inverted, turning the immense energy that protected the ship inward instead of outward. For 3 seconds, the destroyer was crushed by its own defensive systems, compressed into a sphere of twisted metal before exploding outward in a burst of light. Then another ship failed, and another, and another. "Impossible!" Zeth roared, watching his fleet tear itself apart. "Shut down the shields! All ships, emergency shield shutdown!" But the Kryn military doctrine, refined over millennia, had built-in safeguards. Shields couldn't instantly be deactivated during combat situations. It took time to run through safety protocols, time to prevent accidents that might leave ships vulnerable.
time the Kryn didn't have. In 6 minutes, 400 Kryn capital ships were reduced to wreckage. The remaining vessels, those whose commanders had been fast enough or desperate enough to override safety protocols, found themselves floating in space with no defensive capabilities whatsoever. And that's when the Council fleet opened fire. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles crossed the distance between the two forces, slamming into unshielded Kryn hulls. Ships that were considered indestructible only minutes ago burned and broke apart under the sustained assault. The Kryn, so confident in their superiority, had never developed proper armor. Why would they? Their shields had always been sufficient. Aboard the Eternal Night, Szeth stared at his tactical display with something he had never experienced before: genuine fear. His fleet was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that shouldn't have been able to touch them. And at the center of it all were those primitive human ships still maintaining their position, still broadcasting that cursed frequency that had turned the Kryn's greatest strength into their downfall. "Commander, we must retreat," urged his second-in-command, his voice cracking. "We've lost 70% of the fleet. If we don't leave now—" "No!" Szeth slammed his fist against his command console. "The Kryn do not retreat. We do not run from inferior species. Target the human ships directly. All remaining vessels, concentrate fire. If we destroy them, the resonance field will collapse." It was sound tactical thinking, but it came too late. The human fleet, anticipating exactly this response, had already begun their second phase. Each Earth vessel activated its engines and scattered, moving in seemingly